And in this case, that was in the favor.
Yeah, those houses done
So,
decent.
okay, any other?
Is there then a process to modify the encroachment requirements if there's the majority are already accepted?
It's at the county, so we cannot.
Yeah. That's a county deal. Again, that's a point of discussion. Variances, the town is advisory to the county. But again, they try to, they try to go along with our request, but we've had ones where they didn't, so. Okay, no more discussion. You're not on the motion to approve, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 0, 5-0. Okay, you'll notice now there's 2 public comments on the agenda. This is to conform our agenda to our ordinance that actually says this is what the agenda should look like. That's also why we have on this, under new business, elect vice chair to go through that too. So a recent review of that ordinance shows that we should do both of those things. So the public comments are limited to 3 minutes. They should be on the agenda items, but they only have to be, if they're not on the agenda, there can't be any discussion on it. So, John, I see you raised your hand. Right microphone there, and just move that way up and over. You can face it anywhere you like.
All right, I have a few things I'd like to go over here.
3 minutes.
Some of them are, I'm gonna point out some examples of some double standards that are happening in our township here. And these are the things that people are upset with, they don't like it because I'm getting feedback from people in the area. On 5/14 at approximately 7:30 p.m., there was a complaint called into the sheriff's department, and the police department and the sheriff's department arrived in front of the yacht club to discover vehicles parked all over the road and all over the right of way. And the sheriff's squad drove through the parking lot of the yacht club and met the town cop on the bridge. I have pictures of it on my other phone over there if you'd like to see them, we'd be more than happy to share them with you. And nothing was done, and the cops drove away, and nothing happened. And subsequently, there was an email letter emailed off to the sheriff himself, and I don't know what happened at that. I was just getting information from someone that was provided it to me. All right, another thing I'd like to point out here is, and I brought copies here to hand out to everyone on the board here. This is an example of a double standard here. If you flip the page over, you can read when the complaint was on that particular vehicle. It was turned into the town on 4/20. And here we are, almost 60 days later, and nothing has happened to it. Now, that is a neighboring property of ours to the south. And if you're gonna enforce everything on us, which I'm happy to follow the ordinances, make sure you enforce everything on everyone else. Otherwise, that's called double standard. That's the kind of things you don't need around here. The next thing I'd like to give to the board.
Joe, I can turn the beer down.
Yeah.
Turn it down so it's colder.
All right, what I gave you there is I gave you a picture of a tree that's got a camera that's circling it, and that is our neighbor to the south tree. And my neighbor to the south recently put up a privacy fence, which is fine, I have no problem with the fence, it is on our property, we're gonna be pursuing that a little bit down the road. But that particular tree that you're looking at there has a game camera in it with 2 lenses on it that are pointing right over our fence. So our neighbor puts up a fence for privacy, then he proceeds to put up a camera so we can see over the fence. So either he wants privacy or he doesn't want privacy, but he's got a camera pointing in our yard, And if you look at the statute, I'll read the number here for you. 942.110, use of a drone or a camera is defined in section 175.55, section 1A, with the intent to photograph, record, or otherwise observe another individual in a place, location where the individual has a reasonable expectation of privacy, is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. This section does not apply to law enforcement, officer authorized use drones pursuant to section 175.55, subsection 2. So my neighbor is using a camera to where I should have reasonable privacy, which I don't. All right, the second thing that I gave you.
3.5 minutes, John.
I guess.
You guys wanna get another minute?
Just one more minute, I'll be done real quick. The second one is a picture of a container in my backyard that's on a truck. And the picture was taken with a drone, and the drone was down below the 30 meters that's required by law. And when you run a drone, you have to have a line of sight to the drone, and there's not a line of sight there because I believe the individual that took that picture lives about 10 acres away. And that was given to me by Darren Schwenk at the county when I was out there taking care of some payments. And I'm gonna circle back on one thing the chief said. Everything at the county is done. The permits are paid for. Waiting for Darren to process the permits, and I'm done and it's complete. Thank you.
And can I have 3 minutes just to follow up, because I'm the one that has to do the
We're at
drone.
4.5 minutes already.
We'll give her a minute and a half.
I get three. Different person. I'm a different person. I just want to let you know how it is living with a drone. I've been living with a drone for over a year. And the last occurrence was I was actually in my bathtub. I have a tub with surrounding windows, and my neighbor has a drone flying in my backyard. Think of all your wives and your daughters sitting in a tub, or even you men, anybody. And to have that kind of privacy broken, we need to set an ordinance at the town level in order to allow the police officers to enforce it. There's other communities or townships that do that. It makes it easier for them to enforce it, even though it is at the state and fed level. So that's all I want to say. It's very invasive, and I don't want that happening to anybody else. We have zoning officers, we have other officers to do what they need to do when other people have problems like we did. And that's all I'm going to say. It's bad.
Thank you. Any public comments? Public comments?
That's illegal. Really.
Can't do it.
Okay, 4 years. Officer, you mentioned the thing about the checking, watching speeders, don't want something.
Can you speak up, please?
Watching speeders go through in the neighborhood, the Miramar subdivision. Do you remember when I asked you about getting signs posted showing that children are playing in this area? I have yet seen one. I missed the last meeting because the emergency came up with my mother. And somebody came to me and told me that you didn't remember who the person was that brought it up to begin with in that meeting. And then Craig had to remind me who I was. But I still haven't seen any signs saying children slow down. Something like that in some of the north and south roads. And even, I don't think I've seen any over bicyclists slowing either. You got them coming into the subdivision, but you don't have any going up and down the north and south. That would be nice if you put some there. I tell you, my granddaughters are learning how to ride their bicycles. If they get hit by somebody, I won't just sue that person. I'll go after this board in town for not following up and putting some signs up.
Do you have a study of where these people live?
And
I mean, we get a lot of requests on this,
Yeah, I live in-
signs, speed signs. and-
I live in-
and I remember that, you mentioned that,
you
okay.
know, I'm not worried about the speed limits because
Does your group,
down.
no, does your group, I mean, the Miramar Park Association, have they got together and met and
They,
said,
you know, I can talk to these people every day, but
Recommend.
nobody ever wants to come forward.
no, do that at your meeting. Do that at your meeting.
And tell us where you want them.
Tell them where you want.
Yes, I told them that I wanted
But
to.
where
No,
exactly?
specifically, I mean, put it
Specifically
on
in
the
the
map.
subdivision.
Because when we do that, we have to,
So what if I come over to the Public Works Department and talk to Greg, see what he thinks about where they should be put?
what,
He's off tomorrow, so come Wednesday.
you got a map, right? I mean,
No, I didn't.
no, I mean, it's easy to put one together and say, this is where our,
Where we need some,
yes, because there are some out there, but the people that would probably ask for it, those kids aren't there anymore.
we had an officer that knew all these people around here.
Well,
They could have followed up before he got lost, before he left, but nobody followed up on it. And the other thing, and I know my 2 minutes probably up, but we have a corner in Ash and White Oak Drive.
yep.
They got the bushes in that corner. My truck, I creeped up to make sure nobody was coming from the west. I was over halfway the road before I could see anything.
That one, you can tell Greg Allen directly, and then he'll probably meet you out there.
Where's this one?
But the thing is, it sticks up, one of the officers and I met with each other on that corner. He stopped, and he was watching me, see how far I would keep pulling up. And then I saw him when he went down the street. I went around the block, and I was taking a chance to see if he was gonna go south when he got to the end of the stop sign, on the end of the subdivision. And he did. And he says, I'm kinda glad you slowed down and inched your way out. I said, well, this is a dangerous intersection. How come it's not being taken care of?
We have ordinance for that.
Good.
Yeah. And somebody's called about that?
I have. I
Thank
called
you.
Thursday, and
Yeah,
I
I
talked
talked
to
to
you, we
you
were just
one day,
closing
and
up.
Chris talked to you one day.
And then you told me that Greg would call me Friday. Greg didn't call me Friday, so then I called today. Then I talked to Chris, and she told me he would call me. I haven't heard from Greg.
He was off today, he's off tomorrow, he'll be back on Wednesday.
And
I'm sure
So
it
get
is
a follow-up.
a very bad intersection. Some little kids
What's-
gonna get hit.
What's the intersection again?
White Oak and Ash.
Technically, we should have Ray check some of the other intersections too, because they're just bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
the bushes need to be cut back on a lot of people's properties.
Yeah, and you know what, I mean, me and him drive usually once a year and look around and stuff like that. And the minute we start getting on private property, holy smokes, they're coming out with guns.
Wasn't there right of way?
Isn't there an ordinance where they have 35 people?
Well, there's a building, you know? Yeah. But there's a lot of narrow right of ways in there too.
Your Mars are unique. I grew up in Randonville.
I'm not-
Nature of it.
Something to help out.
What? I've been in this person, I think, for
62.
Thank you.
All right, public comments.
My name is Michael Tuchisky. I'd like to follow up with you guys and say thank you for granting my exit interview, which you guys didn't have to do, and then for having the exit interview just prior to this meeting. I thought it went well. I appreciate the comments I received back. I hope it went well from you guys on your end as well. I look forward to continuing on in the future, but once again, I just want to say thank you for allowing me that. And even though this process has been long, I appreciate you guys following up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments? Kurt, right?
Yeah, Kurt Willem. Just a couple of things about the burning ordinance. It got passed last year, now with all the work here, and I just got a couple of questions. I was a police chief, a police officer, and a town attorney, know anything about fire. They went off the ordinance of the DNR, they gave it to the board, they passed it. They got a 20-plus year fire chief, never got a question, anything about it.
TNR ordinance, model ordinance, is about 20 pages long, ours is 4.
He was parts out of it.
I did use parts.
Yes, you did. You know, I'm not pointing, I'm just saying, how can you guys pass something like that without consulting people that are due for that? And I don't know if you have fire background, I know you're a police chief, I mean, the other police officer have a fire department background, 20-plus years and didn't get asked one question. Something ain't right there, right? And the other thing, I'll let that one, you guys over there, you're gonna talk about it, and what you're gonna do about it, but something should be done about it, okay? The other thing, you guys are talking about obstructions and bushes. You guys are talking about the planning commission, you guys wanna put trees and shrubs and a berm on Miramar, or not Miramar, it is Miramar, and ES. You talk about roadblock right now, you're gonna add a roadblock more so people, we had a bad accident not too long ago. So you're gonna push out a berm and trees that block that corner so you can't see those buildings.
On private property, not in the road right away.
But it's still gonna be, where he puts the berm, you know where the stop sign is back there, there's no way you're gonna see northbound traffic.
On paper, it looks good.
Safe situation.
You're gonna create an unsafe situation,
I tend to disagree.
okay?
And Roy Hanson is gonna have to put a stamp on it.
Right, I'm just saying, that you guys are talking about safety issues, there's a lot of safety issues. You know, your board members, more power to you, you're doing your job, but you gotta think about what you're talking about and what you're doing. You have no clue about, on a commission, don't recommend something, go out there and look at the situation.
I know it very well.
Well, I'm just saying, because I worked in government many years, and what you guys do and some of the stuff you do isn't right, and it's not clear. That's the only thing I'm saying to you people, you gotta think a little bit. Let's pass it because she passed it, he passed it, no. Go out and look at it, table it. But then in another sense, don't drag these people down the road for years and years on what they need to be done. So,
That's what
you
they
guys
do.
have a good night, thanks.
Thank you. Public comments? Anyone else? We good? All right, thank you. Unfinished business, Beach Road, bridge on critical list. I was hoping to get a meeting set up before this meeting, but we're meeting here on the 30th of June with Walworth County, with the Railroad Museum folks, Jim Mills, myself. I invited the town chairman from town of Quantico, because they have a bridge also, Van Woods Road. And I invited Scott Seeger from the Village of Detroit. He said he probably won't attend, but he would invite anyway, because they proved that when they sold the railroad, they sold everything, including the bridges. So we're gonna have that meeting, and we're gonna figure out what has to happen here. But one thing that's apparent, as long as the museum owned that bridge, they have not done any maintenance on it. And I do believe, since they got a report every 2 years, that they were a little lax in that, so now it's critical. By critical, it means sometime in the near future, if some spot repairs aren't done, there's gonna be a weight limitation, and if you go a bunch of years after that, it could be closed. So that's what we're gonna discuss. That's why I wanted to bring it up, that we're gonna be meeting on that. Review audit recommendations. And did you have something in the packet on that?
I put it on the desk today, it's right in front of you, Joe.
This one?
Yep.
Why don't you go through it a little bit?
Okay, I emailed Wendy, our auditor, and, because the capital asset plan is labor intensive, she couldn't give me an actual fee to do it. We do have a list of like our buildings and our, our vehicles and stuff that the town does own. But as for going through and doing roads and parks and all that other stuff, that's a different story. And then for the two internal control things, controls over monthly and year-end accounting, if I get a deputy that works more hours, I would cross-train them, and they could do like the physical on paper, and then I could do the balancing, and that would, that would give you a dual control over bank reconciliations. And then as for the final comment, I think that's what we pay the auditor to do, is prepare those financial statements at the end of the year. Otherwise, you'd have to hire an accountant.
Okay. And then I talked to Mary Nickerson more in detail, and she talked to the First Citizens Bank president, quite a bit.
Caldwell.
Yeah, and this had to do with that short time period where we have like $4 to $6 million in the bank before it gets.
That's not even listed on here.
No, but I got an answer from her, so I'll just pass
Okay.
it on to you.
Okay.
The insurance is ridiculous, but transferring it to that state account,
The LJFE.
yes, she will work with you to make that so painless. You just push a button for transfer back and forth, so it's out of our account. So that should take care of it. So, anybody have a chance to study this?
So the first item, I think that's where we talked about, we don't have a capital asset tracking system right now. And we recognize that I think it would be a lot of lot of work to go back, and we don't have good records to do that. But we talked about an option, like as we're doing new investments in the area, kind of starting to build a go forward list. And I see in her email, she mentions maybe just a flat fee of $500
For maintenance, for maintenance.
That's-
Well, she says
Not
to
to
go
build.
forward,
After you
not
build
to
it.
That's maintenance, $500.
and the maintenance on a go forward.
Yeah, after you create the,
After it's created.
after you create the entire
It could
package.
cost up to $10,000, depends how many hours.
Well, we talked
Our
about,
question,
we
yeah, our
talked about
suggestion.
maybe next year having it in the budget, can you push her a little bit, say, give us a price, give us a cost?
Yeah.
It depends how many hours it takes for them to do the research.
How about a range?
Good idea.
She could twist around, and get a range out of her?
She's not gonna be able to guess, because how does she has never delved into our records. I mean, we do have, because for insurance purposes, honestly, we have a list of the vehicles we have and stuff like that. There's a cutoff point, like you don't inventory anything under like $5,000, so that takes away all your computers, a lot of your equipment.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna, how much does a chainsaw? $1,000? If you get a really good one? I mean, yeah.
really good.
Yeah, I mean, so you're,
But I don't
that
think you're-
stuff is not gonna be inventory.
It sounds like there's a disconnect, because I thought one of the options we wanted to consider was as we go forward, and then maybe not until we get another proposal for a new building or something, we talked about not trying to backload everything, but pick a point in time
But
to
you still
start.
have to do all your roads and stuff.
Yeah.
Existing roads, it's not, you can't inventory, okay, we put a new road in Troy Hill subdivision, which are our newest roads. I mean, that's not the complete picture, you have to do all the roads, you have to know when they were built, the cost, when they were built, the cost of how much money has gone into repairing them, that's how you build your capital asset plan.
Yes.
And that's a lot of work, and a lot of hours, so,
I'd like to find somebody that actually did it. Somebody that actually did it. I know,
because the town of Troy did it, but found it too
they
cumbersome
stopped their.
to maintain. And the only point of doing it in the first place is to go into bonding. We're not gonna go into bonding. It's not like Stewart School Road is gonna disappear, it's always gonna be there, but it's all the research that goes into determining a value of Stewart School Road, which is one of how many miles.
Can you ask them if they've done this with other municipalities and what the costs were for those municipalities?
But it all depends.
Well,
Understood, but that gives you.
We have to
Similar-
make assumptions.
yeah, similar size, I mean, if they did one near our size.
How much did it cost?
Right.
Yeah, get a hold of her. I think they're
But
ready,
even if
but
you-
too
I can reach
bad.
out to her too, we have her contact information
Yeah.
here. I can do that.
You wanna do it? Okay.
All there's info is on that letter.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, then at least we have a rough
Right, to
magnitude,
understand, right.
you know.
But once again, why would, say it's $10,000, why would you spend
Well,
That's what we
$10,000?
Yeah, it was recommended in the audit multiple years. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
So we want to do our due diligence.
Okay.
I think every year that's a recommendation.
Right.
Every year for as long as it's been here.
Yep, yep, it's been on there. Okay, Lakeview Amendment District,
You're
we
not
just,
gonna deal with any of the other stuff in here?
oh, I thought you already had it.
Perfectly fine.
I thought you had it listed. 1, 2, 3, 4. We already said quote lines, we're not messing with that. That'd be me.
I was talking about internal controls. You don't have any comments about,
Oh,
once I have a deputy,
The cross check.
the cross-check.
yes,
That should cover that issue. And then for the financial statements, I mean, that's what you pay the auditor for. So that's always gonna be a comment, but you hire somebody, like you're gonna hire somebody to do the capital asset plan, you're already paying somebody to do that. And for a community our size, these are very, very common. 95% of our communities have these comments.
And that has to do just with the number of people, but I do think that a full-time deputy clerk treasurer is gonna fill in some of these voids, and that's one of them.
Supervisor Reyes can ask those questions too when you get older.
Mhm.
What percentage, is it really that high?
She said that when she was here in April.
And I'll look back at my notes, what we talked about.
Okay. Anything else on that, anybody? Discussing it until we get there. Okay, now we're going to move on, Lakeville Management District weed disposal, that's carryover from last month. And apparently you started cutting 1 week ago or something, right?
Right.
So,
They did find a temporary repository for the aquatic plants, but it requires some travel, and it's really not going to be. There are 2 to 3 loads.
Where is it?
I'm sorry?
We're traveling to where?
I'm not sure where it is, but it's,
Is it the Hart Farm, that would change Hart, I thought, that's what Greg told me, I thought.
Oh,
That
that's
was-
within Bowers.
Within each
That would be
road,
that's not
Bowers
far.
Road off of N, and in Bowers, he's just up the hill, the other, just as you go down before, across the street.
Jamie Road,
Yeah,
Jamie?
basically.
And Bowers.
Yeah,
If
that's
that's,
far
if that's
out.
where it ended up, the temporary spot was. But that's not.
there are 2 or 3 loads per day. Each load is 4 cubic cars. Fits into a 1-ton dump truck. But the weeds are coming out of the lake, and they're 80 to 90% moisture content, so they dry fairly quickly if properly drained. If they put on a high ground level, the water will drain off the weeds, and they'll basically shrink up to nothing.
all right.
There's approximately 120 to 140 loads per summer.
And you're still continuing to look?
They're still continuing to search, but they would,
There's one thing, in the discussion on this, almost like so we don't, box yourself in the corner, just like you don't box yourself in the corner. It wouldn't be that bad of an idea to put out 1 day's worth in there and then see what it does. See how it actually.
The compost site?
Yes, yes, to see if it is a problem. It may not be. I know if you make a wad the size of this room and this high, that probably becomes a problem, okay? But if it's dumped out and spread a little bit, I agree. Water needs, mostly water.
Right, then he's right, I think he's right with the, because as long as it's the right spot to drain off, because I've also heard that if you pile them up like that, they turn to mush, and it's like if it's not properly drained, you end up with a huge headache. I've also heard that you should be putting more like leaves in, you should be mixing that in, so who's gonna be doing, where does that cost come for, if we really wanna just try to keep this more of a permanent site or closer?
Yeah.
If you're gonna put in leaves that people bring in or such, I mean,
Well,
I don't know all the details, but.
Yeah, there's probably a 2-year cycle, I
You have to
believe,
be
on
able
leaves
to
at couple say.
rotate stuff.
And the newest windrow, if you wanna call it that, which would be last fall's leaves, that could be mixed in there, but it's a labor to do that.
Right, I mean,
When there's odor and
Yeah,
whatever.
doing that and stuff, I mean,
I-
just another thing to think of,
I would think we just throw out, 1 day's worth and see what happens.
one day's worth isn't gonna, you may as well throw, we
Weeks
do
worth.
140 loads a year, I mean, 1 day's worth isn't gonna, that doesn't really.
How many days a week you cut?
Every day, right?
yeah,
5 days a week?
just
So
various
that's,
sections of the lake.
that's 14 to 20 loads, 21 loads a week. So maybe a week's worth? Or is that too much?
There really isn't, after the moisture content dries out of the weeds, there really is no odor. to the-
If they dry out and it's drained, like you say.
Yeah, probably, or.
We've had in the past, private citizens request loans of weeds for their gardens.
Yeah.
We'll
If
take
you have a big enough garden, that's excellent. But you need
It seems like if when the fellow transports them over there in a dump truck, that he just dumps it and kind of moves, shakes it, you know, like you do with gravel. He's gonna, and then he can spread it out. And then that's one big,
Right,
it kind of stretches it, kind of like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
window or whatever.
So, I think, because we gotta get permission or not get permission for a dry it week's worth.
I think if you picked a section of compost site that is high and will drain the water from the weeds, you'll find that there really aren't a problem.
And that guy would have to meet with Greg and say, here, or maybe it is with the leaves. That may be a good thing, but that's not ours. So, just, okay.
And then I think after we try it for a week, I guess I'd like to understand more about what concerns there are with the alternates like that. Identify,
Well,
being currently being.
It's finding a waste site basically is what it is, right? Somebody wants it, that's what it is.
Well, we said
Possible.
there's using someone on Bowers Road now.
Right.
Did he say he can only take so much, or why is it too far? What's the difference if it's in a dump truck, or more about what's wrong with that, or if we need to alternate between the two,
By
or.
the time you go to Bowers, I mean, you're going down, well, I guess you cut through. You either go down and go around L, or you go down 120 and up Bowers, so as far as site-wise, I think it's it's a horse apiece, really,
It's really
for,
like
you know, it's,
With the landing,
because you got to go around the freeway, you know.
the takeout point is
I
at the
guess it's a
southern
little,
end.
I guess it's a little closer,
Yeah.
but it's within reason.
Yeah.
I mean, the town's put in big, right, so,
Yeah.
a lot of farms.
You were coming down Town Line Road the other day, on the corner, on front of the, Joe Tracy,
I don't know, what you're asking for is, see if Greg would meet Greg out there with a week.
Well, we have to get permission.
20 loads or
for a week's
whatever.
worth, like,
But
15, 20
Let's
loads.
see how
worth.
that goes.
And see what happens. See what the neighbors say, see how it goes out.
But I think, I think we should really strive to keep trying to find a farmer that could really use this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the
Not-
nutrients are in there would be better.
Yeah, you know, I mean.
But compost site, I mean, people come and grab it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how this stuff will look. If it's mixed in with the leaf, that's great.
I don't think it should be a permanent, even if it needs to be held temporarily, but, you know, to try it out and see what happens with a week's load. See where Greg thinks the best spot to put it for drainage, and if he thinks we can.
If you're leaning in that direction, you should make a motion with those limitations on it.
Repeat what you said, because that was good.
Well, just making a motion to, you know, this is
Try it.
to try this for a week, let's say 20 loads, do a temporary thing, but with contingent upon talking to Greg, A, if we have enough high ground
We do.